So I see a lot of stuff out there about terrain boards and, you know, roll up latex boards and building terrain boards. This is a board I did, guys, got to be a couple of years back. Figured I'd do a quick video on this just to sort of give an update on this. This was a project idea that I got off the Pulp Alley forums, where they had talked about using deck protector to make a board. Now this particular board I tried to do pretty generically, although in the back of my head I sort of had you know, an Equine desert board, but it also makes for pretty good just generic earth with other terrain mounted on it. So this is a 4x4 piece of plywood, over which I smeared a generous amount of deck protector. And let me see if I've got the can over here. This stuff. So this stuff comes out in kind of a mushy, almost cream of wheat kind of, you know, sort of like grits kind of a consistency. And you don't have to be very careful with how you're applying it, unless you're trying to go for a super smooth table finish, which I wasn't. I wanted something very irregular with a lot of character to where it could pass as a lot of different kinds of terrains. So for this, there wasn't a lot of prep. There was just the board, and I poured the stuff out of the can in the middle of the table and just started pushing it out from there. I started out with a roller. The roller got jammed, so I just kind of ended up using it as a squeegee. Left it out in the sun to dry, and after it dried a bit, I wanted to break up some of the brush lines and stuff, so I went through and I took a piece of like natural sponge, you know, art sponge, the big chunky stuff with the coarse holes, and just kind of patted it around these areas with this kind of weird ridging. These are the areas where I patted it around to add some more texture to it. That with the stuff being somewhat more tacky, that pulled it up and allowed it to, you know, form this nice texture. So you got some smooth areas and some rougher areas, but the nice thing is that none of these areas are really too high. This stuff naturally kind of evens itself out. So even after doing all that, initially I had a lot of weird peaks, kind of like a meringue kind of an effect, but it leveled out and softened over time. So you get some good alien terrain effect, and based on some of the imperfections in here, you could probably pretty easily do crater effects in here. You know, I've got some little rings and divots and stuff. If you were to shape it a little bit more, spend a little bit more time shaping it, you could easily do like a moonscape. Although you probably wouldn't want to, because the idea of this is just a generic board that you're going to lay terrain on. So flash forward to a few years later, this thing is in the same condition it was when I made it. It has been in my garage. It doesn't have a permanent home. It gets moved around so people can get into shelves and cabinets. Right now it's sitting on my hobby table. The cats have tried to use it as a scratching board, but this stuff is so heavy duty, you know, this 10 times deck restore, that it is unblemished. You know, there's not a chip or anything on the corners. This board is just held tight. It's thin enough to where, you know, I can lean it against the wall out here. I could tuck it behind something, depending on how your garage is organized. You know, you might have, you know, some shelving that you can just stack it on. It's 4x4, so it doesn't take a lot of space, but it's really big for, it's pretty big for a 15mm battle. You know, for, you know, a couple of units, but it's also really good for skirmish level gaming. And like I said, this is a generic kind of desert finish, and it works for just dry earth and stuff too. If you start putting, you know, foliage and stuff on it, it'll easily blend into a jungle. Let's see. that stuff falling in my garage in the background, but hey, it can be picked up. Here's the Equine, settlement that I had done. I still have to rebase it and match its color, but if I pull out some Equine here, you can see there's a stick of them that I'm in the process of painting. This is a pretty good sized board, and that color stands out nicely against other stuff. Here's a couple of converted Hot Wheels for Road Warrior vehicles. These out there on the board work pretty well. Some of my painted Wasteland Mutants. Get these guys out there. You've got a good generic background color that'll work with a lot of deserty stuff. But if you want to give me a moment here, I will see about finding some green foliage. Let's see. Aha. Prepare for more clatter, but let's be just a moment here. So, 28mm ruins, rock formations. This generic color stands out. It kind of blends in. It's not so dark that it can only be muddy earth or soil, but it's not so. It's not so deserty that it just can only be desert. So, yes. Years later, board is still brand new from when I made it. Super easy to make. The color on here, you could go different colors. I had a different, this is the basic paint, or the basic deck cover with a spray of 3 different shades of light browns and tans. There's actually even some streaks of pink on this. And then the entire thing is washed with I had one of those cans of the Army Painter Strong Tone. No, excuse me. This is actually deck lacquer. That's right. This is like it's actually lacquered with I think it's like an almond or peach color that it went over this, but there were 3 shades of spray paint under this. Then I put a colored lacquer over the top, so it gets this nice rosy kind of desert. You can see more of the color variation over here. But yeah, this is definitely worth the time. I did it in the summer. It's summer now, so I'm kind of bringing this up again. I let it bake in my backyard over like 3 days, and I think that really helped too. This stuff just that is rock solid. You can scrape it, it's not going anywhere. In fact, it'll probably damage you before you actually do any damage to it. So yeah, that is just a quick video on my terrain board, and it's a quick and easy one that if you especially for folks who have a shared game space where they don't have a dedicated place to put this stuff up, you don't have to be careful with this. You don't have to treat it with kid gloves. Some of those roll-up terrain boards, they're really nice because you can roll them up and you can put them away. But I hear that they can break down over time, or you have to treat them. Apply. I haven't done anything to this. This thing hasn't even been wiped down with a rag or anything over the time I've had it. It is just, if you have to share your space and you're constantly having to move your terrain board around, this is a way to do it where you can do it pretty much worry-free. You'd have to hit this thing with tools to start damaging it. So, it's definitely worth keeping together. And I'm about to get invaded by a cat here, so I'm going to call this an end. But Hope you guys enjoyed this and my little diatribe on hardboards. But have a good one. Bye.